Hi, everyone. Welcome to Around the Ladder. I'm Erika Steinberg, and this is the podcast about career paths that don't follow the usual script. We've all heard about climbing the corporate ladder, but careers often zigzag, they stall, they take unexpected turns. If your journey hasn't been a straight climb, you're in the right place. I love the idea of going around the ladder and finding a path that fits who you really are. So, in this show, I get to speak with people who have taken unconventional routes by choice or by chance, and they've found success on their own terms. My guest today is Sarah Pew. Sarah is the founder of Sarah Pew Consulting, where she helps small businesses thrive by building scalable systems and streamlined operations. With experience ranging from hypergrowth tech startups on a national stage to supporting entrepreneurs in their day to day growth, Sarah specializes in turning complexity into clarity. Through her consulting practice, she partners with business owners to implement sustainable strategies, document processes, and create the operational foundations that fuel long term success. Sarah, I am so happy to have you on here. I loved that we met when I first heard you speaking on a panel and about these very same things. So, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's so fun to be here.
Thank you. So, let's start with your earlier career because I mean, everybody who comes on the show has taken an unconventional route, but I feel like you more than others have really like you've dipped your toe into all these different things and it is and to me that's fascinating because I have only worked with law firms my entire career and I'm not a lawyer, which it makes it even weirder than it already is. But you've tried different things, and so I always like when people have that, and you could pull from different experiences. So you started in teaching and education, and then you moved into recruiting and compliance, and I think and operations, of course. So looking back, when you think about like the early career and what you're doing now, what threads connect those early roles to your current work?
Yeah, I think going back even further, I was a theater major in my undergrad. And so I am very much of the fake it till you make it. So any new role I've taken on, I've looked at it as a role. How can I prepare for it? So education, I was in from a very, very young age. I mean, I babysat, I worked at summer camps, I worked at tutoring houses, and it came naturally to me. So I enjoyed that. And then I just kind of continued growing into it. I would teach in after school programs throughout university and then started doing some always alternative education, never in public schools. I lived in Japan teaching. And as I did all of that, as much as I loved the kids and I loved teaching and I loved seeing how they grew, I started to notice that I liked seeing how everything worked. And that really came to fruition when I worked at a preschool and I was in the classroom with the kids and it was so much fun. But I saw that there were these inefficiencies in the office that I thought I could help with. So I moved into the office of the preschool and just helped modernize some of their operations. This is many, many, many moons ago, but using spreadsheets and creating a digital library and little things like that. And I kind of had this aha moment that maybe this is a place I could be. And so um, I actually spent a few years traveling around the country with my husband as he was getting himself situated as a professor. And when we landed in Stony Brook, I said, give me 2 years. I want to get an MBA and try this business thing. Uh, X number of years later, we're still here. But I kind of fell into that and got an internship and grew from there. And as you said, I did governance, I've done compliance, I've done operations, but all of that has an aspect of education in it. I
Yeah.
want to help make the people working with, whether they are people that I'm managing or even people that I'm reporting into, more effective, either by putting processes in place or teaching them. So I don't look at it as uh, distinct starts and ends to different career paths. To your point, it's like a little bit of a winding
Yeah.
route, but I'm pulling that same thread through of helping people, of educating people, of trying to improve the processes throughout.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And so then you've done a fair amount of work with startups also, right?
Yeah, that's where I kind of cut my teeth on the business side. I worked at a health tech startup and I've worked at VR tech startups and I've done some fintech.
And so was that a shock to the system being in an environment like that after being in other, maybe more traditional institutions, or did it all just kind of flow?
A lot of it is people management, regardless what
Yeah.
tactical things you're doing, and it's getting people to work together. A lot of what I do is break down silos and help people communicate with each other. And it doesn't matter if you're three or you're 43, having those communication skills to be able to negotiate. And I'm not talking about a sales negotiation, but
Yeah.
just even within the day to day, to compromise, to persuade. A lot of what I was doing was that. So, I mean, yes, the maybe the language I used was very different. Probably the feel of the physical environment was very different. But it is helping people be the best they can be and wherever they are and giving them the tools to do so. For in an education environment, it's maybe giving them the information, it's teaching, giving them those tools. In some of these operational environments, it's either giving them the information for how they can be more efficient or simply creating the back end pieces so that
Yeah.
they just are more efficient.
So can you walk us through what, when you're working with a client and you're helping them streamline operations, you're helping them scale, what does that transformation look like? I mean, I have a small business. I've certainly, and you and I both know a lot of people with small businesses, and we're trying to move from here to here. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into that.
Yeah. So what I'm doing now is taking what I learned over the years that I was in these hyper growth tech startups and giving it to the solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. So there are a lot of tools out there that are free or freemium that many small business owners just don't even know about. I have some clients who don't know about scheduling apps. And so they're still doing pen and paper. So with those clients, I'm starting with helping them get comfortable with this idea that they can have an online calendar and people can just schedule time and they can block things out. I have some more, let's say, technologically sophisticated clients that I'm building out customer journey maps. They're a one-person show. And so it's all in their head right now, but their goal is to be a multi-person show. And so we're building that documentation and then taking that documentation and automating it within these different systems so that they can bring on their next person and they're not spending all of their time having that person shadow them or having to answer every question. It's documented, it's automated. There's guardrails in place so that they don't kind of go too far out of the lines.
Mhm.
And so it's really a matter of talking to the clients. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What is your risk reward comfort level? Some people are willing to go fast and break things. I'm happy to help with that. Some people are a little bit more cautious. And fun fact, I go fast and break things on my own. And then once I've tried and true, tested it, then I bring it back to them and say, okay, this is how we're going to move forward. But that's really what it comes down to. The biggest thing is a commitment to doing that scale and a comfort with the unknown. And that's probably the scariest part. I've always done it this way. Like, okay, but if we're gonna move it, we're probably gonna want to try a different way. And if you're willing to take that chance, you're gonna see some huge improvements in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I would imagine that that is scary, especially if it's your idea. And there are also, I mean, there are so many tools out there, so it gets overwhelming to know what to pick. But I would imagine that probably one of the hardest things for business owners and for your clients is um, making changes and doing things outside of their comfort level, outside of their comfort zone. When you see that somebody's coming up against that, or like pushing up against that barrier, how do you how do you help them? Like, how do you help them? Like shove it out of the way, push it out of the way, gently set it out of the way.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a handful of things. You were talking about there's so many different software out there. I do caution people against shiny object syndrome. You may not
And
need the
there,
biggest, best, newest thing. I do a lot of my stuff like within Google Sheets. I have all sorts of automation. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I do have my set of software suite that I enjoy. So if you come to me and you say, I don't even know where to start, I'm going to say, let's start with this. A, I can manage it for you very easily because I'm very comfortable with it. B, it's likely free or freemium, and C, it's generally pretty user friendly.
Mhm.
So that takes that decision out of the way. The other thing is I do use a lot of automation, so you don't necessarily have to change all of your habits at once. But Sarah, I do everything via email. Fine. I can have Trello send you an email. I can have Monday send you an email. Like I'm going to be working in this system and I'm going to be coaching you on how you can work in this system, but you're still going to get your emails that are telling you you have X number of cards outstanding. And by doing it in bite-sized pieces, I find that people are less scared of the change and they start to see that immediate improvement, that time that they get back because they're not having to, shuffle through all of their information. And they start coming to me saying, okay, you know what? I don't need an email every day. I need it every week, or I'm going to start checking it every day. And we can start getting fancier with everything. And that's, when you're working with me, what people really like is they ping me at midnight. They know I'm going to see it when I log on in the morning and I'm going to respond. So there's no more feeling like, well, I want to text so I don't forget, but I don't want her to think that she needs to respond at midnight. You've got all of these asynchronous communication tools, which depending on how you're working and with whom you're working, you can have almost 24-hour a day productivity because you're throwing things out to people who need it. And when they're available, they're picking it up and you see it just smoothly going back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, as you were talking about going through this process, the other thing that occurred to me, and I remember going through this myself, um, you have to think about your process. And a lot of times, like you said, it's in somebody's head, but they know it, but there's when you have to articulate it, it can get challenging. Do you see people like I know when I went through something similar, the process mapping was very interesting to me. And I didn't realize how many holes there were that I didn't know existed. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I didn't realize is that even going through the process of mapping it and going through my operations, I realized like there were places where I wanted to tighten it up and not just the process, but the service itself. Like I felt like going through the process of tightening up operations was also leading me through the process of honing and better articulating my services.
Yeah.
Do you find that
Yeah.
as well? I mean, and it caught me completely off guard. I was so surprised by it.
Yeah, I'd be interesting in how you do that. Often when I'm helping someone document their process and do process mapping, they're telling me, and then I'm mapping it. And that way, when you're trying to document your own, you still have some of those gaps. But
Oh,
when
I
you've got
couldn't
a
do it on my own.
third party doing it, and so they're telling me, I'm listening, I'm taking my notes, and then I draw the map and I put big stars like, well, wait, what happened between A and seemingly H? Like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, you're right. Actually, we do da 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 da. And sometimes it's honing the services, like you said. Sometimes it was just like, I have 27 different contract templates that I send out. I'm like, well, let's not. Let's pick one. Let's have an agreement template, and then you can have SOWs if you're doing different things. Or maybe these actually aren't different services. You can just, change a line. So those types of things really help. And then there's that extra level when you try to automate it. Because I'm still a human, so I can do some human processing. But when you go to automate it, these are if-then statements. So if all of a sudden you get stuck in this box, you give yet another level saying, okay, I can't have 14 different options here, or I need to be
Yeah.
very clear how each of these options get chosen.
Yeah, yeah. When you said that, you said, you have to pick you get to pick one. I was talking to somebody recently and she said, you'd be surprised at how many business owners forget that they get to pick. That you can pick. You don't have to have 14 different 14 different templates or 27
Yeah.
different templates or however many that you get to pick. Do people forget that? I mean, I forget it all the time. And I actually wrote it on a post-it note and I put it in front of me just so I could remember it.
Yeah. I think a lot of the people I'm working with, I have some established companies that are just looking to enhance their technological presence and really lean into AI and automation to streamline their operations. But I also have a good subset of clients that are just starting out. And the pick one often seems to be like just pick what you're offering. Full stop. Everyone's like, well, I'm a jack of all trades. I can do everything. And I don't want to miss an opportunity because, and I was the same way. When I first started, I was like, chief of staff, VP operations, that's my background. I think the definition is Jane of all trades. And I found that when I narrowed down my pitch, I got even more quantity and more variety of work. When I was
Yeah.
like, no, no, anything you want, whatever you want, I'll do. They were like, well, that's overwhelming. I can't make that decision. But when I say I'm doing digital presence and I'm doing back office operations, then that's a conversation starting point. And then in that conversation, we talk about other things. Yeah, absolutely. I can do vendor management for you. Absolutely. I can do, contract management for you. And those things happen in the conversation, but they've already understood that I do digital presence and back office operations. And that was something to latch onto. So that's a conversation I have all the time. Just try to narrow down what you're doing, what your service is, and you're going to see yourself grow.
Yeah, and pick the things that you love. Pick the things that
Yep.
you love and that your clients really respond to that are kind of like at the center of what they need. If you pick like the center of the wheel and then there are all of these spokes, all of these other services that you can offer and other ways that you can help. But yeah, pick what you really love to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of going out on your own, right? When you're in corporate America, you do what's thrown at you and you don't often have a choice. That's one of the
Yeah.
great things is having started my own gig is I get to choose what I do. I get to choose with whom I work. That's a privilege that I hadn't had previously, and it's very lovely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and again, I come back to that woman saying to me, like, you get to pick. And I was like,
Hmm.
I keep forgetting that.
Yeah.
I mean, as we're talking about this, I would imagine, and I know that my own journey as a business owner has been, it's yielded many surprises, and one of the surprises has been how linked it is to my personal journey. That if there is something going on for me personally, it's going to come out in my business. If there's something going on in my business, I'm going to, bring it home. I mean, I work from home, so I'm just bringing it downstairs, really, I guess. But when the work that you're doing with people when you're going through their businesses with them, it is really I imagine that it could result in things like a lot of self-reflection, discovering different things. So are there obviously they're going through a transformation because you're helping a founder uh create a business that works for them and that runs the way it needs to
Hmm.
work for them. What other benefits do they end up finding? Like, are there other things, like, I don't know, like more confidence, more freedom, more whatever?
Yeah, I think with the people that I work with, um, like I do a lot of websites. I build a lot of people's websites. And you can see when that light bulb goes off of their messaging because they have it in a Word document or they have it on their LinkedIn or their resume, and that's what they're using. But then they see it in whatever design that we've put up, and they're like, either, oh my God, yes, that resonates, or what were we thinking? And so for them to be able to really uh, hone that message and feel like they have that aha moment for their elevator pitch or their tagline or whatever that is, that's really, really special. And I love seeing that immediate impact that I'm making. And the other thing is when I do those websites, I generally offer a handful of hours after we publish it, after go live, as part of the package, because I know that what you do in dev doesn't always meet what you need when you're live. And so we just have those handful of hours available to them so that once it's live, as people are visiting, they're like, I couldn't find this button. And we had thought it was in such an obvious place. But, we're not going to fight with people. Instead, we're going to look and see. And so to be able to take what we had in our dev environment and then see it live and make those final tweaks that really shows the personality of the individual, the um, mission and vision of the company, that is a hugely impactful thing. And a lot of these people that I'm working with, many of them women, have felt their personalities were shrouded when they were in corporate America. They had to fit into whatever box it was. And so now their business is reflecting a lot of their personal views as well. And so to be able to help them highlight that and show that is incredibly meaningful to me.
Yeah, I feel like I was one of those people. I don't feel probably not completely shrouded. The people who worked with me knew my personality. But I've always worked in law firms. It's a very, it's a fairly conservative environment. And I remember working with, do you know Danielle Hughes?
Yes.
So I remember working with Danielle early on. That's how I met Beth, is through Danielle.
Okay.
When I remember working with Danielle early on, and she was talking about personality brands and letting your brand shine through and letting something. She said, it doesn't mean you're sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. It means that you are sharing something of yourself in a way that people can connect with it. And
Yeah.
so to be able to start a business. I mean, that in and of itself is such a huge accomplishment. And then to be doing your website and figuring out, okay, how much of myself do I want to show through this? And then you are working with somebody who understands that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, when I redid my website, both times that I've done my website, I have learned so much about myself, what I wanted to do, my own personality, and each time I've learned more.
Yeah.
So,
And I think from me personally, I was told in previous roles, I couldn't wear bright colors and I couldn't wear jewelry, and like there were all of these things. And now I have a very brightly colored brand, and I have kind of cheeky business cards, and I'm going to do a good job, and I'm very professional in what I'm going to provide you, but I'm also silly and I'm friendly and I'm going to ask you how you're doing. And if that doesn't work with you, you're talking about, you can pick, then maybe we don't work. And again, that's not a freedom I had before.
yeah.
But with my own business, I'm not going to be who I'm not. I'm always going to do a good job for you. I'm always going to listen to what your vision is for the website or what your pain points are for scaling. We're going to make it work for you, but I am going to be me, unapologetically so. And if we match, I love it and I want to help you. And if I'm not your cup of tea, I understand that. And that's okay. And I even have people that I can refer, right? Like that's a very special thing that you have as a business owner, is to choose, like you said, pick what you offer, but also choose your clients.
Yeah. I remember when I first started and I was creating my logo, the brand, and I did some messaging. So I kind of, I didn't completely fall down on it. I definitely have done a lot better since in the years since. But I remember looking at that first logo in retrospect and I realized, oh my goodness, I made the logo the same navy blue and dark gray that at the time just about every law firm had as their colors. And I mean, there was so much blue and gray out there. And that's what I did because that was my client base and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
felt comfortable with. So that's what I stuck to. And then somebody else had to point it out to me. I didn't even realize the first iteration of my first website didn't even have any photos in it. No images, no photos. And somebody said, well, that's kind of a bold way to go. We have maybe put a photo of yourself. And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about this
Right.
because
Right.
I'd always been part of something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even like with LinkedIn, one of the things that I'd always gone all in on making my LinkedIn my company, whatever company I was working with. And in this whole process of starting my own business, and it's something that I recommend to others, my LinkedIn is about me. And right now, me and my business are one and the same. So
Yeah.
it's overlap. But if I do go back to working full time, my LinkedIn's going to be about me. My LinkedIn is who I am. And then I am an asset to that company. We were talking about personal brand, right? I had no personal brand. I was getting lost in being such a cheerleader for whatever corporation I was working for, that there was nothing authentic about Sarah. And that was a challenge as I was trying to move and be like, no, no, I'm Sarah. They're like, well, you're not. You're just this company.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, during the years that LinkedIn took off, I was with one firm for almost 12 years and
Hmm.
then on my own. So for the last, almost 20 years, I was in one place and I was doing the same thing. I mean, I wasn't even really posting anything on LinkedIn. I barely even looked at it. I had to learn
Right.
all of that uh, when I started my business and really get used to it and get used to sharing more of myself and who I am and who my business is.
Yeah.
So, but that also, so that reminds me of something else. I was thinking about like, um, culture and leadership and things like that. So when I think about, or when you think about really operational success, like I would think about it in terms of systems and processes and stuff, but how much of it is also about, and this is, I guess, for the larger organizations that you work with, how much of it really also depends on culture and leadership style?
Yeah. You need the systems in place. You can't have operational excellence with no systems. But on the other hand, you can't have operational excellence without a culture that's supporting it. So I think that they really do go hand in hand. Currently, the people I'm working with, they're the solopreneurs, they're the small businesses. They just need the tools.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about larger organizations, it comes down to change management. We talked about people being scared of things that are new. We talked about it being hard to pivot or people thinking this is just going to be another administrative nightmare and it doesn't allow me to do my work. So it's important to get the buy-in from all levels of the organization as to why whatever process you're implementing is beneficial. And I have done that a lot through demonstrations, through kind of workshopping it, letting people see we're doing ABC. It's going to take X amount of time up front to build it. And I know that's going to take away from some of your productivity for this month, let's say, but then you're going to see all of this time coming back to you on the back end and giving people that full full visibility into what the whole process is going to look like. I'm not a big fan of just trust me. I think that people get very frustrated with that. I know I
Yeah.
get very frustrated with that, but to explain why it's going to help, where it's going to help, and how it's going to help really allows people to buy in. And nobody wants to do mundane work that they don't have to do. They want to do the exciting work. So if you can start to automate some of these uh, pieces that are really preventing you from doing the more exciting work, people get on board pretty quickly. Take
Yeah.
some hand holding, but they do get on board.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where I think, where we see internal communications being so important and that always seems to be an afterthought. Not always. I don't want to generalize, but it frequently seems to be an afterthought in larger organizations. And like you said, like there's this just trust me aspect to it. This is, or I love it when those, I remember one partner saying to me when he was reviewing something, an email that I had written that was going to go out to a whole lot of people. And he said, I started it out with like, as you may know. And he said, Erica, if it says as you may know, then most of us don't know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so I was like, okay, how should we start this then?
yeah. One of the things I like to build are dashboards so that everybody has access to it. Like obviously there's some information that's more sensitive, but a lot of the information anybody within an organization can see. And a good example is around OKRs, right? For larger organizations, we have these OKRs so people can identify their goals and all these things. Um, and when you have a dashboard that anybody can access at any time, then you've broken down a lot of those barriers and the conversations can be much more meaningful because you don't start with, where are we? Everybody knows where we are. We have that dashboard. You start off with, well, why is this part a challenge? Or kudos to this part, we're exceeding, right? You can have more of the meaty conversations because everybody has a level playing field. You all know what's going on.
Yeah, and also when you have that, then you can also, each person, each individual can see where they fit in and how they contribute.
Yep.
So, and that I think would, it just feels better. When you
Yeah.
see how you're contributing to the whole, it just feels better. So
Yeah.
then how do you, when you're working with a small organization, how do you build that or do you, like, how soon do you start to build that?
Some of the things you can build immediately, or maybe better said is you can put the pieces in place so that when it's needed, you can build it. If you start doing your task tracking in a way that is reportable, even if you don't need the reports in the beginning because it's just you, as you start bringing people on, you're not having to learn a different system or start tracking things in a totally different way. You've built it in a way that you can easily grow the systems as your company itself grows. And a lot of these small companies I'm working with are, even if they have two or three people, they're still remote and across the country. And so these dashboards are still helpful to be able to see what is going on and who's focused on what. I'm really big into uh, task trackers, not as a way to micromanage, but as a way to reduce the amount of back and forth. You don't need to be going in Slack or text or email. This is what I'm doing. You can have it all on a task tracker and it's there and it stays static and you can always go back and review it again. So those types of things I do encourage people to implement sooner rather than later because it's harder to shift a habit than to build a habit from the start.
Yeah. So then or I was going to say, are you always um, building things for the way you want the company to become rather than the way the company is?
Not necessarily. I am using tools that are scalable so that I don't
Like
have to
grow with you.
reinvent the wheel. So, right, you don't need to have massive reports being sent out if you're not there yet. And that's kind of operational burden. I don't think we need that. But if you are just thinking about, okay, well, we're going to want to know who's focused on it, what, like just some of the smaller pieces that you can put into your building blocks, then you're able to expand upon them more easily than if you say, no, no, it's just me and one other person. We're just doing it in a notes app, or we're just texting each other. Those are the types of things that I generally am recommending against, especially because there are free options that are slightly more structured.
Yeah. So I know that, or I believe that you're part of other communities like Chief, and I
Mm-hmm.
think you mentioned the Chief of Staff Network. Um, how do how do peer groups like that not only help you show up for your clients and foster your own growth, but then do you recommend similar, that your clients join similar groups, whatever's appropriate for them?
So I've loved these groups. I've been active on different levels in both of these groups and some others. I think going out on your own and just not having your coworker next to you to ask every question to, having these groups as a place to pose those questions is invaluable. Um, it's also a great place to network and potentially even get new clients. As to whether or not I recommend my clients join a group like that, it's really dependent on what their goals are, how mature they are in their business, and sometimes what their business is. I'm industry agnostic because operations is operations. I'm going to kind of do the back end work so you can focus on what you do. I've got e-commerce, I've got therapists, I've got consultants, like it runs the gamut. Um, I do always talk about, how valuable I found these groups. And if someone asks me, I would, say, oh, here's one that I know about, but I don't necessarily say, yes, you absolutely have to join a group.
Yeah. So this time has flown by. I can't believe it. I just peeked and I was like, this has already been more than half an hour. Well, more than half an hour. I do have one last question for you, though, or actually two last questions, but I'll start with this one. What unexpected lessons or benefits have come up for you from going around your own ladder, really, rather than climbing a traditional one or climbing somebody else's ladder?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest unexpected benefit was or is being around for my children. When I was in office or even not in office, but kind of tied to my desk with my 9 to 5, which let's be honest, sometimes is a 7 to 10, I missed a lot. And now I get the opportunity to go to school events, even just to chat as they get home from school, to go to sporting events. And I'm very um, careful about and good about scheduling my workday around it. I went off on my own to be a benefit to myself. And to me, that's one of the benefits. So if I have a track meet for my son, I'm going to block it off on my calendar and I'm just not going to have anybody schedule a meeting during that time. Um, that's been so amazing. Like
Yeah.
if there were no other benefits, that is enough. And the lessons I'm learning have to do a lot with resilience. And I think that's because going straight up the ladder, I wasn't really ever responsible for sales. I was operations and I could grow. And now I'm responsible for sales and for everything. And sometimes I do a sales pitch and someone says, no, thank you. And I get very, very sad. And I'm like, why don't they like me? And I have to take a breath and say, like, not everybody is going to want to work with you. There's, it could be a whole host of reasons, but you got to keep trying, keep getting out there. So I'm getting better at that, but I do have to give myself a little pep talk every now and then.
I'm right there with you. So you are not alone in that one.
Yeah, there's I have yet to tell that to somebody, and they're like, Psh, I don't care. Everyone's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really hard. It's really hard, and especially when it's your business because you're not selling for someone else. It's like, wait, they don't like me. They don't. You
Yeah.
you take it to heart because you work so hard at it.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. And I've gotten a lot of pep talks from my husband, from other members of my family. So, yep.
Yeah.
And so my last question then is, I'll put this in the show notes also, but would you tell me like how people can work with you? Should they reach out to your, or do you have any special offers that you want to share or anything in particular?
Yeah, I would love to help anybody. The best way to reach out to me would be probably just through my contact form on my website, which is sarahpew.com. I made it nice and easy. And when you reach out to me, just mention um, that you heard about me through this podcast. And I'm doing 25% off a website build for people who find me through the show. And then, of course, there's all of these other options that we can talk about to bring you to the next level.
That's fantastic. That's a great offer. Just 25% is pretty sizable. So thank you so much. I'm so glad that we did this. I feel like there's more that I want to ask you, but I'm going to reserve the right to have a part two.
Love it. I
Okay.
love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. And that is it for this episode of Around the Ladder. Remember, there is no one right way up. So take your detours, make your moves, and keep carving your own path. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or a colleague or somebody who's looking to build a website right now, and or anyone who's on their own unconventional journey. So see you next time. Thank you.